I wasn't supposed to reveal this. Not yet, not to everyone. But you were drawn here. And nothing in this world happens by accident. You may think you chose to listen, but I tell you your deeper self brought you here. The self that knows far more than your waking mind ever dares to admit. So sit quietly for a moment. Let the noise of the day fall away. Let the old beliefs loosen their grip, and allow me to speak to that silent place within you. The place where truth is heard long before it is understood. Tonight, I will reveal a secret I once thought no one was ready for. A secret whispered to me not by another man, not by books, not by teachers, but by the depth of my own being. I carried it quietly for years, teaching it only in fragments, wrapped in parables and stories, hoping the right souls would catch its meaning. But now, you are here, and that means something in you is ready. You see, my friend, you have lived too long as though life were happening to you, as though the world were some mighty force pushing you from one circumstance to another, shaping your days, shaping your future, shaping your fate. But tonight, I intend to wake you, not gently, but utterly. For the truth I am about to share will not leave your life as it was. It is a truth so simple, and yet so vast, that the moment you accept it, the old world dissolves. Every limitation falls away. You step out of the role of victim and into the role of creator, a role you were always meant to play. And I tell you this plainly, once you hear what I will reveal, your life will never again be able to return to the comfortable misery of I can't, or I hope, or someday. No. After tonight, you will know too much. You will know why certain desires have followed you all your life. You will know why dreams that seemed impossible whisper to you still when the world is quiet. And now I want to ask something of you. Something very simple, yet very powerful. When you declare before the universe that you are ready, you do more than speak. You command. So when this experience ends, and your eyes open again, I want you to act upon this moment. Do not let it remain silent within you. Declare it to the universe. Go below and write in the comments, I am ready to receive. Write it as a living act of faith. For when you put those words into the world, you send a signal through the great field of consciousness. You are saying to life itself, I am open, I am willing, I am ready. And life, being imagination made visible, will answer. And you will know why. Even in your darkest moments, something in you refused to die, refused to give up, refused to settle, refused to believe the story that life had written for you. You were drawn here because the author of your life is awakening, and the author is you. So I speak to you now, not as a mentor, not as a lecturer, but as one who has walked the same path, one who has discovered the hidden door behind every human experience. And tonight I invite you to step through that door with me. If you dare to listen, not with your ears, but with your imagination, you will find the world bending to the truth you accept within. Take a breath now, let your mind grow still. We are about to begin. Before we go any further, you must release one of the greatest illusions that binds man to suffering, the illusion of time. We speak of past, we worry for the future, we cling to the present as if it were fixed. But I tell you from experience, not philosophy, there is no past, there is no future, there is only the eternal now, and the states you occupy within it. Let me show you. Years ago, I had a conversation with a man close to me. A simple exchange of words, yet filled with tension, misunderstanding, and a sense that something precious had been damaged between us. For days afterward, I felt disturbed. The scene replayed in my mind like an echo. His tone, my reaction, the sharpness in the air, it all felt like a stain on the soul. One night, I could not bear it any longer. So I did what I had begun to teach my students, even before I fully understood its depth. I closed my eyes and re-entered that room, not as memory, but as a present experience. I sat again where I had sat. I heard his voice again, and instead of the clash, I imagined warmth. Instead of sharpness, I imagined laughter. I heard myself speaking kindly, and I heard him respond with a gentleness that had never occurred in the so-called past. I revised the scene until it ended perfectly, beautifully, as though the unpleasant version had never happened at all. And then I fell asleep. The next day, I received a letter from this very man, a letter filled with the warmth, the apology, the affection that matched the scene I had revised. He wrote as if the distress between us had never occurred. And in that moment, I understood something extraordinary. I had not changed the memory. I had changed the event itself. For the subconscious does not distinguish between what has happened and what is imagined with feeling. To the deeper self, imagination is the only reality, and therefore the past is as malleable as soft clay in warm hands. When I revised the scene, I did not fix an old moment. I selected a different reality, a different branch of experience, and the world rearranged itself to match the new selection. This is why I say to you, time is not a river moving forward. It is a vast ocean of possibilities, existing all at once. You dip your consciousness into one possibility and call it the past. Then you dip it into another and call it the future. But truly, you are only choosing which version of events you will occupy now. When you grasp this, the spell of time breaks. You stop fearing what has been and stop chasing what will be. You realize that every outcome, every blessing, every solution exists now, waiting only for your assumption of it. This is why the sentence we will explore tonight is so powerful. It does not apply to tomorrow. It does not apply to someday. It operates in the eternal present, the only place where creation happens. Once you understand that the past can be rewritten and the future can be selected, you begin to approach life with a confidence the world cannot explain. You become the master of your timeline, not its prisoner. And from this vantage point, manifestation is no longer effort. It becomes selection, alignment, recognition. The door is open. The illusion of time is dissolving. And now you are ready for the next unveiling. Now that the illusion of time is loosened, you must face another truth, one far closer to home. Your life has not changed because you have been imagining from lack, even while believing you were imagining your desire. This is the most common mistake. I have seen it in thousands of students, from all walks of life, all convinced they were visualizing correctly, yet producing nothing but frustration. Let me explain. When you visualize a desire, but feel the absence of it, you are not imagining the desire. You are imagining not having it. You may picture the home you want, but if the feeling behind the picture is, I hope this happens someday, then what you are truly imagining is, I do not have it. You may pray for more money, but if the prayer is born from fear, from anxiety, from desperate hoping, then what you are actually affirming is, I am poor. And the law, which is always perfect, always precise, always impersonal, must echo your true inner state, not your words, not your wishes, not your fantasies, but the feeling you hold as true. This is why so many struggle. They imagine toward the desire instead of from the desire. They try to climb a hill that they themselves have invented. They pray to a God outside of them, hoping he might intervene, when all along the creative power they seek is their own wonderful human imagination. This is the confusion at the root of nearly all suffering. You believe yourself to be the creation, praying to a creator separate from you. But I tell you, the creator and the creation are one. What you call God is your awareness of being, your I am. That is the name of God given in Scripture. Not I will be, not I was, but I am. Every time you say, I am tired, I am broke, I am unlucky, you are using the sacred name to call forth states you do not truly want. And every time you say, I am blessed, I am wealthy, I am loved, you are doing the same, summoning, selecting, commanding a state into expression. Once you grasp this, life becomes astonishingly simple. You no longer beg, you no longer plead, you no longer chase, you no longer ask some distant deity to change your circumstances. Instead, you assume the state of the one who already has what you desire. You move as that person, think as that person, feel as that person, and the outer world must mirror the inner choice. This is why your life has not changed. You have been trying to change the world without changing the one cause of all phenomena, your own conception of yourself. But tonight, as you move through these teachings, that conception will shift, and when it shifts, the world must shift with it, not gradually, not partially, but completely. For the moment you accept a new state, reality reorganizes itself to match that acceptance. You will soon discover how natural and effortless manifestation becomes when you stop thinking of your desire and begin thinking from it. And when that happens, your life will begin to move with a grace and certainty you have never known before. Now you are ready to understand the next great key. Consciousness is the only reality. You will not understand the law, nor the promise, nor anything I teach until you grasp this one truth. Consciousness is the only reality, not matter, not circumstance, not the opinions of others, not the evidence presented by your senses. Your consciousness, your awareness of being, is the root, the seed, the cause of every event you call your life. Long before I ever spoke to an audience, long before my lectures were transcribed, long before I ever stood behind a podium, I discovered something that shook me to my core. Everything I had ever experienced, every joy, every disappointment, every triumph, every limitation, was nothing more than the outpicturing of states I had accepted within myself. I had been creating my world without knowing I was doing it. And so are you. This is why I tell you with absolute certainty, not as theory, not as speculation, but as revelation. Nothing exists outside your consciousness. Nothing. Now let us turn to Scripture. For Scripture is psychological truth written in symbolic form. In the book of Exodus, God reveals His name. I am that I am. Not I am this, nor I am that, but I am pure. Being, pure awareness, the foundation of all creation. When Moses asked for authority, the voice replied, "Say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you." The name of God is the very essence of your own awareness. Every time you say, I am, you are invoking the creative power that formed the worlds. But the tragedy of man is that he uses this sacred name to perpetuate lack, fear, and limitation. When you say, I am afraid, you are not describing a condition, you are creating it. When you say, I am poor, you summon poverty with the same power that could just as easily summon wealth. When you say, I am unlucky, you decree misfortune with the authority of God Himself, for the name is the same. You may not believe this at first. You may think the world has power over you. You may think circumstances are fixed, or fate is written, or destiny predetermined. But I tell you, circumstance is nothing more than the child of an inner state. Change the state, and the world must reshape itself to reflect it. This is why prophets spoke in symbols, why the Bible is written in metaphor, why ancient teachers hid the truth under stories and parables. They knew that if man understood the power of I am, he would cease giving authority to anything outside himself. For if consciousness is the only reality, then every person you meet, every event you endure, every joy you experience is simply consciousness pushed out into form. My friend, once you truly accept that your I am is the creative power, you will no longer bow to conditions. You will no longer plead with chance. You will no longer cry out to the heavens for something that only your inner being can give you. You will turn within. You will assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You will declare your desire through the name I am. And you will watch as the outer world conforms with mathematical precision. This is the foundation beneath everything we will explore tonight. The sentence you will soon hear has no power unless it is spoken from the understanding that your consciousness is the creator. Once that truth settles into you, your world cannot remain the same. And now you are ready to see why manifestation feels hard, until you discover the secret of states. Let us now address something that has troubled so many sincere seekers. Why does manifestation feel difficult? Why does it seem that some desires flow easily, while others resist you like a closed door? The answer, my friend, is far simpler than you imagine. And once you see it, the struggle will leave you forever. It is this: you have been trying to manifest your desire from the state of not having it. You have been standing in the cold of winter and trying to imagine warmth while still shivering. You have been trying to call abundance while wearing the emotional coat of scarcity. You have been thinking of the desire, not from it. This is the great distinction. that separates effort from effortless creation. When you think of something, you acknowledge it is separate from you, distant, future, hoped for, observed from afar. But when you think from something, you enter the state of it, you assume it, you wear it as natural, you occupy it as now, and the world, being nothing more than your imagination made visible, must reshape itself to mirror the state you occupy. Let me give you an example. Imagine a woman who desires companionship. She longs for it, prays for it, visualizes it, but every night she falls asleep, feeling alone. She is thinking of love, but feeling from loneliness. And so the law, which always mirrors the state, not the desire, continues to project loneliness into her world. Now imagine instead that she enters the state of being loved, not by force, but by imagining the warmth of an embrace, a voice calling her name, the simple joy of sharing a small moment. If she falls asleep, feeling the reality of that state, love must come, not because she begged for it, but because she became it. The same is true for money. You may visualize wealth, but if you fall asleep feeling anxious about bills, you are not in the state of wealth. You are in the state of lack. And the state, not the picture, is the seed that grows into form. So hear me well. Manifestation feels hard only when you attempt it from the wrong state. You cannot plant seeds of abundance in the soil of fear and expect a harvest of prosperity. This is why I have spent so many years speaking of states. A state is an attitude of mind, a mood, a feeling, a position in consciousness from which you perceive the world. You are always in a state. The question is only which one. There is a state of wealth, a state of poverty, a state of confidence, a state of doubt, a state of love, a state of resentment, a state of joy. You can pass through several in a day, but whichever you return to, that becomes the state that bears fruit. So if manifestation feels difficult, stop and ask yourself, from which state am I imagining? Am I thinking of the desire, or from the desire? When you answer honestly, the mystery dissolves. For the law is not cruel, it is precise. If you occupy the state of having, you must have. If you occupy the state of being, you must be. If you assume the end, you must live the end. Manifestation only becomes effortless when you stop trying to change the world and start changing the state from which you perceive the world. And now that you understand this, you are ready for one of the most powerful chapters in this entire journey. Revision, the key to altering your entire timeline. Now we come to a truth so vast, so daring, so utterly outside the world's logic, that when I first began teaching it, many thought I had taken leave of my senses. But those who tried it, those who had the courage to assume that imagination creates reality, they saw miracles that defy every belief about time, memory, and fate. This truth is revision. I do not speak of positive thinking. I do not speak of forgiveness in the common sense. I do not speak of rewriting memories to make yourself feel better. No, revision is much more profound. Revision alters the past, not emotionally, not symbolically, but factually. Let me tell you the story that first convinced me of its unimaginable power. The father and the lost son. Many years ago, a man approached me after one of my lectures. He was trembling, his voice unsteady. He said, "Mr. Goddard, my son died 2 years ago. I cannot sleep, I cannot breathe, I cannot go on. Is there anything your teaching can offer a man like me?" There was a silence between us, one heavy enough to touch. Then I said, "Do you love your son?" He nodded. "Then bring him back." He looked at me as though I had spoken madness. So I explained, "Go home tonight. Sit in the chair where you once sat with him. Close your eyes and imagine the scene again, not as it happened, but as it could have happened. Hear his voice, feel his presence, see him smiling, healthy, alive. Do not remember the tragedy, revise it. Live the scene until it feels real, then fall asleep in that feeling." The man left, conflicted, uncertain, but desperate enough to try. Weeks later, he returned to me weeping, not from sorrow, but from awe. "Mr. Goddard, my son is alive to me again. He comes to me in dreams, so real I smell his hair. I feel his weight when he hugs me. The grief has vanished. The pain is gone. It is as if the tragedy never occurred." And then he said, the words that still echo in me. When I revised it, something in me believed it, and now I live in a different world. Understand this. Revision did not bring the boy back in flesh, but it rescued the father from a timeline of agony and placed him in a timeline where love, not grief, ruled his inner world. And that inner world reshaped everything. He remarried. He found work that fulfilled him. His health returned, not because the outer changed first, but because the past he carried was no longer one of pain. My own awakening through revision. Now let me tell you a story of my own. In my early years in New York, before I understood the depth of imagination, I had an argument with a dear friend. It left a bitterness in me that lasted days. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to test this strange power I had just begun to uncover. I returned in imagination to the moment of the argument. I heard his voice, but this time I changed the tone. I softened his words. I softened my own. I made the conversation unfold beautifully, with respect, with affection. I repeated the scene until it felt real. Then I drifted into sleep. The next day, my friend arrived at my door with a warmth and tenderness that matched the revised scene in every detail. But here is the marvel. He remembered no argument at all. To him, nothing painful had happened. It was as though the past had always been exactly as I had imagined it. In that moment, I realized revision does not change your memory. It changes the event. It selects a different reality altogether. For if consciousness creates reality, and the past exists only in consciousness, then the past is as open to change as the future. Why revision changes the timeline? When you revise a scene, you are not pretending. You are not fantasizing. You are not deluding yourself. You are choosing a different version of the past from the infinite possibilities that exist in consciousness. And once the past is changed, the present must change with it, for they are one continuous fabric. Revision works because consciousness is not linear. It does not move from past to future. It exists in an eternal now containing all outcomes. You revise the past in imagination, and the new selection ripples through your timeline like ink through water. People shift. Events shift. Your emotional world shifts. Opportunities appear that could never exist in the old story. Now I ask you, what would you revise? What memory still governs your life? What wound do you still carry? What moment does your heart replay when the world grows quiet? A conversation, a betrayal, a humiliation, a loss, a financial disaster, a moment of panic or shame. Close your eyes, re-enter the scene, rewrite it as it should have been. Feel the relief, feel the love, feel the perfection. Repeat it until it feels real. Then let sleep take you, for tonight you can free yourself from the prison of what was and step into the freedom of what is. And now that you understand the power to change your past, you are ready for the deeper mystery, the secret of states. Now that you understand the power of revision, you are ready to step into the heart of my teaching. The great secret I have repeated for decades to anyone willing to listen. You do not attract, you become. This truth is the cornerstone, the foundation, the skeleton upon which the entire world is built. And to understand it, I want you to imagine something with me. The mansion of infinite rooms picture, if you will. A vast mansion, endless in both directions, with corridors that stretch beyond sight. Every door in this mansion leads to a state. Not a place, not a situation, not a future event, but a state of consciousness. Behind one door is the state of wealth. Behind another, the state of poverty. Behind another, the state of love fulfilled. Behind another, the state of loneliness. Behind another, the state of radiant health. Behind another, the state of chronic illness. And then there are states of success, genius, confidence, failure, joy, despair, opportunity. There are as many states as there are names to call them. Now hear me. You are always in a state. You cannot exist without occupying one. But the world you see with your eyes, is nothing more than the shadow cast by the state you occupy within. If you are in the state of wealth, you will find that the world behaves as though it must make you wealthy. Ideas come, people help, doors open. Not because you attracted anything, but because the state you occupy must express itself. Just as water flows downhill, A state must unfold itself objectively. Why most people feel stuck? Most men and women try to change their lives while remaining in the same state. They try to be wealthy from the state of lack. They try to feel loved from the state of abandonment. They try to be healthy from the state of sickness. So their prayers fail. Their affirmations fall flat. Their visualizations collapse. Why? Because they are thinking of the desire, not thinking from the desire. And the difference is the difference between night and day. Examples of states made visible. Let me show you this with clarity. There is a state of wealth. When you occupy it, you walk differently. You speak differently. You expect differently. You decide differently. And without effort, the world rearranges itself to match the inner assumption. There is a state of love fulfilled. When you occupy it, you no longer long, no longer beg, no longer fear. You radiate the end. And the one you love cannot help but play the role your state assigns him. There is a state of radiant health. When you occupy it, your body obeys, because the body is only a printout of consciousness. There is a state of success. When you occupy it, your mind becomes sharp, your intuition awakens, your opportunities multiply, not from effort, but from internal alignment. You do not attract. You become, I tell you again, you do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. And what you are is determined solely by the state you occupy. If you change your state, you change your world. For your world is nothing more than the outpictured drama of your inner condition. Now I ask you, what state have you been living in? What room of this infinite mansion have you allowed yourself to dwell in? Lack, fear, hope deferred, waiting, or have you dared to inhabit the room called fulfillment? The room called I am wealthy? The room called it is done? Remember, the world is not external, it is yourself pushed out. And when you change your state, your world must change with it. Now, with the mansion before us, let us step into the state where effort dissolves and manifestation becomes natural. The state that is reached not by struggle, but by surrender. We now move deeper into the secret of dropping the strain and letting the fulfilled desire rise within you, like morning light. Let me now bring before you 3 stories. Stories not of theory, but of lives reshaped by the simple act of assuming a new state. These are not tales of luck, nor stories of chance. They are demonstrations of the law in motion. Sarah, the woman who stood in the state of love. Sarah came to me many years ago, after a lecture. She was a gentle woman, soft-spoken, but carrying an ache that seemed fused into her very posture. She said, "Mr. Goddard, I have spent 10 years longing for love. I pray, I hope, I wish, and nothing happens." I looked at her and asked the only question that matters. "Do you feel loved?" She blinked at me, confused, and whispered, "No." I replied, "Then nothing can change until you inhabit the state of the one who is loved." She protested, "But how can I feel loved if no one loves me?" And I said to her exactly what I tell you now. You do not wait for the outer world to justify the feeling. You begin with the feeling, and the outer must confirm it. I instructed her to construct a simple inner scene, not complicated, not dramatic, just a single act. I said, "Imagine the weight of a wedding band on your finger. Feel someone you dearly cherish kiss you goodnight. Hear the words, 'I love you,' not from longing, but from fulfillment." For weeks, she persisted. She lived from that tiny scene. And then one morning, she received a letter from a man she had met only once, years before, when she was a guest at a friend's dinner gathering. He wrote, "I don't know why, but I haven't been able to take my mind from you these last weeks. May I see you again?" They married the following year. She later told me it felt as though the love already existed, and he simply stepped into the role, because that is what he did. He was drawn into the script of her state. James, the businessman who lived in the end. James was a young man, full of ambition, but drowning in failure. Every venture he touched collapsed. He worked tirelessly, yet remained on the edge of ruin. He came to me frustrated, angry, even. He said, "Neville, I do everything right. I plan, I organize, I push harder than anyone." I smiled gently and said, "That is precisely the problem." Then I asked, "Tell me, James, do you ever imagine the end?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" I said, "You imagine the work, the struggle, the effort. But have you ever experienced the end, the success, as though it were already real? He admitted he had not. So I gave him a simple instruction. Every night, before you sleep, imagine yourself sitting at a large wooden desk, the desk of a successful man, and feel a contract in your hands, a contract that represents the breakthrough you desire. Feel the satisfaction, feel the certainty, feel the relief of it is done. Do not think of success, think from it. He followed the instruction faithfully. Within 2 months, James was approached by a man he had never considered important, a former acquaintance with connections he desperately needed. That connection opened doors. James had knocked on for years without response. He succeeded not by effort, not by struggle, but by alignment. He stepped into the state of success, and success expressed itself through the channel most natural to his world. He later told me, "I did nothing, it happened to me." And I reminded him, "It happened through you. You changed the state, and reality obeyed the new selection." Mary, the woman who believed she was unworthy. Mary was perhaps one of my most memorable students, because she embodied a struggle familiar to so many, the belief in unworthiness. She had grown up hearing that money was dangerous, that wealth made people greedy, that abundance was for others, but never for her. So whenever she tried to imagine prosperity, a wall rose in her heart, a silent voice whispering, "You don't deserve it." One night, after a lecture on the law of assumption, she approached me in tears. "Mr. Goddard," she said, "I try to imagine wealth, but I feel like a thief stealing something that isn't mine." I told her, "Then you must revise your worthiness, not money yourself. For wealth is not something you acquire, it is something you allow." I instructed her to imagine her late mother, the one whose voice of lack had shaped her childhood. I said, "See your mother looking at you with pride. Hear her say, 'I was wrong. You were always meant to have more. You deserve a beautiful life.' Hear it until you believe it." She practiced this for weeks. She wept. She resisted. She persisted. And then the shift occurred. She told me, "I woke up one morning and the feeling of unworthiness was simply gone, as though it never belonged to me." 2 months later, she received an unexpected inheritance from a distant relative she scarcely knew. But the money was not the miracle. Her sense of worth was the true transformation. She said to me, "For the first time in my life, I feel allowed to prosper, allowed to be happy, allowed to receive." And I replied, "That feeling is the wealth. The money is simply its shadow." These 3 stories, Sarah, James, and Mary, demonstrate one truth. States create reality, and when you change the state, the world cannot help but rearrange itself accordingly. Now, if these stories have awakened something in you, prepare yourself, for we are about to enter the most delicate part of this journey: how to release effort, drop the struggle, and let the universe manifest without resistance. Now we arrive at a truth that most minds resist, and yet it is the simplest, most liberating revelation you will ever hear. Creation is finished. Everything you desire, every outcome, every possibility, every version of your life already exists now, complete, whole, fully formed, in the infinite imagination of God. And since God is your own wonderful human imagination, these possibilities exist within you. There is nothing to create. There is only something to select. All possibilities exist. Now, when I say creation is finished, I do not speak poetically. I mean it literally. There are infinite versions of you, infinite futures branching like light from the single source of your consciousness. There is a version of you who is wealthy. There is a version of you who is healthy. There is a version of you who is deeply loved. There is a version of you who is fulfilled, secure, confident, joyous, radiant. All of these selves exist now, just as all stations of radio exist now, but you do not hear them until you tune the dial. Likewise, you do not experience these versions of life until you move into the state that corresponds to them. You do not create the future, you select it. This is the greatest misconception in the world. People believe they must fight, earn, struggle, build, and force their future into existence. But listen to me. You cannot create what already is. You can only select which portion of eternity you wish to experience. If you imagine wealth, you are selecting the timeline of wealth. If you imagine failure, you are selecting the timeline of failure. If you imagine love, you are selecting the timeline of love. Your imagination is the selector, the switch that shifts you from one dimension of experience to another. And when you shift inwardly, the outer world reshapes itself to match the new selection. This is not metaphor, it is law. How to change the frequency? So now you ask, how do I change the selection? How do I tune into the reality I desire? The answer is simple, by feeling yourself to be the person who already lives in that reality. Not as an act of hope, not as a mental exercise, not as wishful thinking, but as a deep, inner knowing. Just as you tune a radio, not by ripping apart the machine, but by adjusting its frequency with a delicate touch, you tune your consciousness by adjusting your state. And the tool for this tuning is imagination infused with feeling. If you feel wealthy, you have tuned into the frequency of wealth. If you feel loved, you have tuned into the frequency of love. If you feel secure, you have tuned into the frequency where life confirms that security. The feeling is the dial. The imagination is the signal. The state is the new station of reality. Once you occupy a new state, the old state dissolves like a dream forgotten at dawn. Everything you desire already exists. Let this be clear, you do not bring anything into existence. You simply align with what has already been created, what has always been yours in the eternal now. So tonight, as you listen, as you breathe, as you surrender the old state, you are not trying to manifest. You are selecting, choosing, occupying the reality that already contains your fulfilled desire. And when you do, the outer world must rearrange itself to reflect the inner choice. For reality is not solid. It is fluid, responsive, malleable in the hands of consciousness. Now, having understood that creation is finished, we move toward the gentle sacred art of letting go, of relaxing so fully into the wish fulfilled that manifestation becomes as natural as breathing. Let us continue. We have come now to the core, the living heartbeat of all manifestation. If I could speak only one truth for the rest of my earthly days, if I could whisper a single teaching into the ear of every man and woman on this earth, it would be this: feeling is the secret, not thought, not words, not idle imagination, not the frantic repetition of phrases. Feeling. The world calls feeling emotion, but it is far more sacred than that. Feeling is the soul of the assumption. It is the substance of the unseen act. It is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. Where thought can wander, where speech can lie, feeling cannot. Feeling reveals what you truly occupy. Fantasy versus feeling. There is a great difference between fantasizing about a desire and feeling the desire fulfilled. Fantasy is distance. It imagines the desire as over there in some far-off someday. You see it, you picture it, but you do not enter it. Fantasy is the poor man, staring at the feast through the window. Feeling is the poor man sitting at the table, breaking the bread, tasting the wine. Fantasy keeps the state away. Feeling brings the state alive. Fantasy says, I hope one day. Feeling says it is done. Why feeling creates reality. The subconscious mind, the womb of your world, responds only to feeling. It does not understand your words. It does not understand your struggle. It does not understand your effort. But it knows your inner atmosphere. It knows the mood you carry. It knows the emotional climate you drift into at night when your mind has grown quiet. And that climate is what it reproduces in the outer world. Every circumstance in your life is the echo of a feeling once accepted as true. If you feel lack, life must echo lack. If you feel abundance, life must echo abundance. If you feel love, life must echo love. If you feel unworthiness, life must echo unworthiness. The law is impartial. It simply reflects the feeling you clothe yourself in. How to impress the subconscious? Now you ask, how do I impress the subconscious with the feeling of the wish fulfilled? I will tell you plainly. You gently assume the feeling that would be yours if your desire were already an accomplished fact. Not by forcing, not by straining, not by repeating until you are exhausted, but by relaxing into the simple joy of it is so. Take a moment, even now, to imagine something you desire. Not as a hope, not as a wish, but as a scene happening now. Perhaps someone congratulating you. Perhaps a letter in your hand. Perhaps a bank balance that fills your heart with relief. Do not imagine the steps. Do not imagine the process. Do not imagine the struggle. Imagine only the emotion of the end. Relief, satisfaction, joy, calm, gratitude, fulfillment. Let the feeling rise, not violently, but gently, like the tide returning to shore. Let it wash through you. Hold it lightly until it becomes natural. Then let it go. And know this, what you feel with conviction will crystallize in the world of fact. The door to the subconscious, the best moment to impress the subconscious, is the moment right before sleep. When the body relaxes and the mind drifts, the subconscious is open, undefended, receptive, like fertile soil. Plant the feeling there, and it must grow. Tonight, before you fall asleep, do not think of your desire. Feel it. Feel it as though you were already living it. Feel it until the feeling becomes your final thought of the day. Then, let sleep take you. For your subconscious, in that sacred moment, receives the seed, and once planted, it must bring forth after its kind. Now, having understood this mystery, we shall move deeper still into the art of surrender, the gentle act of letting the universe work on your behalf. Once the feeling has been accepted as true. In Scripture it is written, "In the beginning was the Word." Most read this as history, as a story about a distant God speaking creation into being. But I tell you, this is not a tale of the past. It is a psychological revelation. The Word is not sound. It is not something uttered by the lips. It is not language in the ordinary sense. The Word is your inner speech, the ceaseless flow of silent sentences you whisper within yourself from morning until night. This inner conversation, often so subtle you barely notice it, is the creative force behind every event of your life. And whether you know it or not, you live from these silent assumptions. You carry them like seeds in the mind, and the world, your world, must bring them forth. When I teach that imagination creates reality, I do not mean mere images. I mean the total inner atmosphere. And at the center of that atmosphere stands inner speech. It is your private dialogue that reveals the state you occupy. If your inner speech says, "No one ever helps me," the world echoes back people who seem indifferent. If your inner speech says, "I never have enough," circumstances will rise to confirm the lack. If your inner speech says, "Everything always works out for me," then the world, obedient as a shadow, will rearrange itself to make that statement true. Many believe they are the victims of circumstances, of people, of the economy, of fate. But I tell you plainly, you are the victim only of your inner speech. Change that, and everything changes. A woman once told me, "Neville, I affirm abundance, yet I remain poor." So I asked her, "What do you say to yourself when you are alone, when no one hears, when you are washing dishes, walking down the street, lying in bed?" She fell silent, then whispered, "I say I am afraid. I say, I don't know how I will pay my bills." There was no mystery. She had been praying aloud for abundance, but worshipping lack in her heart. Your true prayer is your inner speech. It is this silent realm that shapes your world. So I tell you now, you must reprogram your dialogue within. Gently, without force, without condemnation. Become aware of the sentences you repeat in the quiet of your mind. Do they reflect the life you desire or the life you fear? Replace the old conversation with a new one. A conversation spoken not by the man you are, but by the man you desire to be. If you want wealth, let the inner voice whisper, "All is well. I am richly provided for." If you want love, let it say, "I am cherished. I am wanted." If you want success, let it say, "Everything I touch prospers." Speak it inwardly, not as a wish, but as a fact. Not as something hoped for, but as something already true. For this is what Scripture means when it declares that the Word was God. Your inner word, your silent assumption, is divine. And when you persist in a new conversation, the outer world obediently bends to the tone of that inner voice. Tonight, make your inner speech your ally. Let it sing the song of the fulfilled desire, and soon the world will join in harmony. There comes a moment in this work when words must fall away, when images lose their sharpness, when effort dissolves completely, and you enter what I call the silence. This silence is not the absence of sound. It is not the quiet of a room at night, nor the stillness between breaths. It is a creative void, a sacred emptiness, a place where the senses withdraw and the imagination stands bare and unclothed. It is here, in this hush beneath all thought, that the seed of your desire is planted with the greatest power. When I speak of silence, I speak of a dimension you touch each night just before sleep overtakes you. That brief, floating moment when the body is heavy, the mind is soft, and the world seems far away, that is the doorway. In this state, you are neither fully awake nor fully asleep. You are suspended. You are drifting in the womb of creation. I discovered early in my work that this silence is the secret workshop of the subconscious. It is the place where impressions, when gently placed, sink deeply and take on life. When you enter the silence, consciously, you will feel as though the world within you grows vast and eternal. Time stretches, form dissolves, thought grows quieter, like ripples settling on a lake, until the water becomes perfectly still. And in that stillness, there is no resistance, there is no doubt, there is no question of how, there is no sense of separation between you and your desire. There is only I am, pure being, pure awareness, pure capacity to create. This is the true holy place, not built with hands, not found in temples of stone, but within the depths of your own wonderful human imagination. Now, how do you use this silence to sow the seed of your desire? You do not speak loudly. You do not force images. You do not strain to feel something. You simply let the wish fulfilled rise within you, like a soft glow behind closed eyes. You surrender to it. You yield to the joy of it. You accept it. If your desire is wealth, feel the stillness of security. If your desire is love, feel the warmth of being cherished. If your desire is health, feel the ease, the vitality, the strength. No words are necessary, only the essence of the feeling. Then, and this is the secret, you allow yourself to drift deeper into that silence until you lose yourself in it. When you disappear into the feeling, when you surrender identity and become only the state itself, the seed is planted. You may not feel a dramatic moment. You may not feel a spark or a sign, but the work is done. The subconscious has accepted the impression, and what is accepted within must appear without. The silence is not empty. It is pregnant, it is rich, it is fertile. It contains all possibilities, and it responds to the slightest touch of feeling. Tonight, when the lights are low and the world grows quiet, enter the silence. Sink into that creative void with the ease of a child falling into sleep. Bring with you not the longing for your desire, but the fact of its fulfillment. And when the silence receives it, it will make it flesh. Faith, how lightly the world uses that word, and how poorly it understands it. Most men speak of faith as though it were hope, a trembling wish, a fragile optimism, a desire stretched toward a distant tomorrow. But hope is a beggar. It stands outside the gates of your desire and asks politely to be let in someday. Faith is entirely different. Naughty faith is loyalty to the unseen. It is the bold, quiet certainty that what you have assumed in imagination is already a fact, though the world of senses may present evidence to the contrary. Faith does not hope. Faith knows. It rests in the end, as though the end were already here. It walks with the inner conviction that the invisible reality is more solid than the visible one. And I tell you, the world will test you. It always does. The moment you assume a new state, the state of wealth, the state of love, the state of success, the outer world may rise in opposition. Old patterns may echo. Old shadows may flicker. Old doubts may whisper. This is not the failure of the law. This is simply the dying breath of the former state. When the tree of the old assumption is being uprooted, the soil shakes. In these moments, the weak return to the familiar state and say, it didn't work. But the faithful, the ones who understand the law, hold the assumption even when the evidence screams otherwise. They know that the outer world is but a shadow, and shadows take time to shift. I once told a young man, a man desperate for money, clinging to his last coin, that he must imagine himself wealthy and remain loyal to that feeling, even as the bills came knocking at his door. He said, Neville, that feels like lying. And I replied, it is not lying to live in the end. It is claiming the truth that the senses cannot yet behold. Days later, when his situation seemed to worsen, he nearly abandoned the assumption, but he held fast. He persisted. He remained loyal to the unseen state. 1 week later, a man he had not spoken to in years offered him a business opportunity that lifted him entirely out of lack. He told me, when I held the state, everything in the outer world seemed to break. First, and then everything broke open. This is faith, a steadfastness of imagination, a commitment to the inner reality over the outer appearance. You must understand the senses are truly wonderful servants, but terrible masters. If you let them dictate your state, you will live your life in circles. But if you dictate your state and compel your senses to follow, you will rise into a world most believe impossible. Faith is not a feeling of confidence. It is a decision, a choice to remain loyal to the unseen fulfillment until the unseen becomes seen. When the world contradicts your desire, smile inwardly. It means the old story is dissolving. When doubt visits you, do not fear it. Return to the feeling. Return to the end. Return to the knowing. It is already done. Persistence, gentle, calm, unwavering, is the key. Not effort, not strain, not repetition without life, but the quiet inner certainty that the imaginal act has planted a seed which must bear fruit in its appointed hour. Remain loyal to the unseen, and the unseen will become your world. There is a part of my teaching that many overlooked in the early years. They came to me for the law, for the power to shape their world, to attain wealth, love, health, freedom. And the law does all of this, faithfully, without exception. But beyond the law lies something far greater, something holy, staggering, utterly beyond the imagination of the natural man. I call it the promise. If the law allows you to rearrange the shadows of life, the promise awakens you to the one who casts the shadows. It is not about manifestation. It is not about the fulfillment of earthly desire. It is about discovering who you truly are. Let me speak to you plainly. There comes a time after you have played the game of life with imagination as your guide, when something stirs within you, a movement, a trembling, a pressure from above. And suddenly, in a way you cannot predict and cannot mistake, you experience the birth from above. This is not symbolic. It is not metaphor. It is as literal to the inner man as physical birth is to the outer. You feel a vibration in the base of your skull, a crack, a release, and something rises within you like a wind, like a fire, like a serpent of light, uncoiling and climbing through the body. This serpent is not evil. It is not the serpent of superstition. It is the ancient symbol of divine power rising, the same serpent Moses lifted in the wilderness. It climbs from the lower nature to the higher, and when it reaches the skull, you feel an explosion and you are born, not of blood, not of flesh, not of the will of man, but of God. You awaken in the tomb of your own skull, and you push your way out into a world of unimaginable brilliance. This is the first sign. But the promise continues. In time, you encounter the second great event, the appearance of David. He is not an external figure. He is not a character from history. He is the personification of your own eternal being. He is the Son of the Father, your Son, and when he stands before you, you know without doubt, I am the Father, and my Father is God. This is the fulfillment of Scripture. I have found David, a man after my own heart. It means that the power you once thought of as external, the God you prayed to as though he were far away, is revealed as your very self. And then, as the promise unfolds, the body is split in two from top to bottom, and you ascend in a spiral of light into the heavens, not into the sky, but into a new dimension of being. It is the serpent returning home, the energy of the divine reuniting with its source. I speak of these things not to mystify you, but to tell you that your desires are not accidents. They are not trivial. They are not merely about money or relationships or success. Your desires are the first whispers of the greater awakening within you. They are the early contractions of the spiritual birth. Why do you long for abundance? Because you are meant to discover that the giver and the gift are one. Why do you seek love? Because the love you seek outside is the reflection of the love that waits to awaken inside you. Why do you desire freedom? Because you are destined to know the only true freedom, the recognition that you and God are one. Every desire, no matter how earthly, no matter how simple, no matter how small, is part of the great journey leading you to the realization of your own divinity. The law takes you to the promise. It teaches you to move the pieces of life. It shows you that imagination creates reality. It reveals that all states are yours to occupy. It proves, again and again, through your own experience, that consciousness is the only reality. And once you believe, deeply, instinctively, without effort, that imagination creates, you are ready for the veil to lift, and the God you once imagined above you, or outside you, or beyond you, is revealed as your own being. This is the purpose behind every desire. This is the meaning behind every longing. This is the promise whispered beneath all manifestations. You are not seeking things. You are seeking yourself. And one day, unannounced, unexpected, unsought, the promise will erupt within you, and you will know, I am He.